the guys call deep cut that all
There we go. Okay, get everybody back. Thank you. Hopefully everyone had a good 45, 50 minutes or so. Got some food in it. Councillor Zawitz, I see you made it home in time. Awesome. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order now at 1:49 p.m. We do have all of council present, or at least their cameras are on, so they're somewhere in the vicinity. I do want to acknowledge today that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples, and it's been Indigenous peoples that have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. It's their stewardship throughout the ages that we'd like to truly recognize today and tomorrow. Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed, and anybody who is going to be participating in our meeting today is consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We did not receive any comments through our regular email channel. We do have a supplementary agenda item, and that is item 7C, which is a verbal report from our Director of Public Works regarding Hartmix paving on Everly Road. I'm going to turn now to council and ask if we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'm not sure if Councillor Zavitz, oh, no, just it froze briefly. I'm not sure who's doing a Superman. We do not have any, or not seeing any. So that's great. We do have a number of invited delegations, and they were supposed to start at 1 p.m. So I'm going to say, why don't we jump straight ahead to that, and we'll go to our first delegation, which is regarding Hyman Ackerman, excuse me, and that is Leo Longo. Mr. Longo, are you with us today? Just joining into the meeting right now. Oh, there's Mr. Ackerman and Mr. Longo. And this is regarding item 6A from our General Finance Committee meeting minutes and a license of occupation. Mr. Ackerman, I see you, and I think is Mr. Longo going to join you today? Nope, just coming in. There we go.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Mr. Longo, I'm not sure who wants to take the floor, but I'll leave it to the two of you to decide. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ackerman will commence, and I'll then provide some concluding remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ackerman? Oh, you are just muted, Mr. Ackerman. We need you to hit the little microphone button on your computer screen. There it is. We're good.
Thank you. Your Worship and council members, thank you for allowing me to present my case to you today. I also wish to acknowledge the site visit made by my representative councillors, Mason and Roberts, on July 5th. Thank you. Firstly, regarding the General Finance Committee, item 1, I fully support and I am aligned with the township with this resolution. The road allowance should be restored without any financial impact to the township, as was pre-existing October 2020. Before I continue, I would like to draw your attention to the 2 photographs that were sent to you as part of my presentation. Now, in respect to General Finance Committee 2, I respectfully ask you for a reconsideration. There is appropriate and sufficient evidence to support the acceptance of Resolution 2. Sewer pipe. Less than 36 months ago, Township Sandy Boss, building inspector and sewer specialist, had inspected, validated, and approved our system October 2018. We have annual inspections by an engineering firm, which is mandated into perpetuity as required for any new system applied. And I have reference to the Corporation Township Muskoka Lakes Certificate of Inspection, Readiness for Occupancy, and it clearly states the service and maintenance agreement prescribed in the Ontario Building Code shall be maintained for perpetuity. The sewer line moves north, away from the water to the septic field. The measure of offside is 1 foot by 11 feet, out of line, out of 120 feet, fully inspected annually. And this is a measure of less than 10%. large topographical challenges and large rocks, outcrops, and cliffs are a barrier, as evident in the photos you see. Our PEng and our sewer contractor stated that extensive work on the roadway allowance would be required to remedy causing significant destruction of rock and would be required to effect change. All parties concerned with this case are seeking peace and tranquility. Any rock destruction would cause harm and angst to all parties. Read the staircase and rocks on the ground. This provides for a safety path away from the cliff. 2, this also provides for stability and maintenance support of any erosion. 3, this provides for a defined pathway without risky alternative paths. 4, stairs are matched in color to rock cliff, complementing the surrounding topography. I know that you will give this matter your consideration. Respectfully and thankfully, Hy Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Your worship and council members, I would just like to add a couple of points that were raised at the planning committee meeting, and I don't wish them to be forgotten when council is making its final decision on this matter. In my letter of June 9 to the committee, I set out a number of conditions that our client has indicated he would accept as being imposed with any license agreement. And I basically went through many agendas on your past meetings and took out every conceivable condition I could find, that it be time limited for 20 years, that there be an annual fee paid that escalates every 5 years, that proper liability insurance is maintained throughout, that all survey and legal fees are paid for by our client, that there be no further encroachment or development in the original road allowance. And in the unlikely event that the road allowance was ever to be used by the municipality, the encroachments would have to be removed. Against those various conditions, I believe Mr. Ackerman has even indicated one or two more in an email that we sent to council that includes the 2 photos that you've just been looking at. So respectfully, these encroachments are minor, and the municipality will be fully protected and the public interest fully protected if the license agreement is provided with the conditions imposed. 2 other points. You may recall our client has owned this property for about 17 years. These encroachments predate his ownership, and they haven't been enlarged since he took over the property. And you may recall, committee members will recall, that the neighbor who's in the vicinity on the other side of the road allowance indicated he took no position, his clients took no position on the 3 encroachments. That was not the nature of their concern. Their concern was the restoration of the road allowance from the recent work that was done for the pathway last fall. And as Mr. Ackerman has indicated, we offered in our June 9 letter to fully restore that, and we have no objection to the resolution that came out, recommendation that came out of committee that required that restoration. So council members, due to the minor nature, the existing long-standing nature, and that there's no objection to this from the public, with the conditions that we're proposing, we would ask that recommendation 1 from the committee be endorsed, that we restore the road allowance where the pathway was established. And number 2, that the second recommendation not find favor with council, but rather that council resolve to enter into a license agreement for the three minor encroachments that do exist, subject to the conditions I've mentioned. Thank you very much. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ackerman and Mr. Longo. Appreciate it. Council, I'm going to ask at this particular time if anyone has any councillor appetite to vote on this item separately. Councillor Roberts, I see your hand is up, and I've also asked Clerk's Department maybe to be able to put up the recommendations coming out of GNF. But Councillor Roberts, comment? And Gord, you're on mute. Gord? Gord?
Well, sorry about that, Worship. Yes, and through you, I support your proposal to put the three up on the screen to review them, and then I would like to comment from what happened during what we viewed during our site visit.
Okay, we're just going to get the recommendations up, and maybe we can deal with them in context. I think Mr. Longo and Mr. Ackerman are both in agreement that the road allowance needs to be restored. So I'm not so much worried about that particular one, I don't think, unless anybody has any opposition to that. I think the one contentious one would be the license of occupation regarding the sewer line and potentially stairs. So we're going to put those up, and then I'll let Councillor Roberts comment. And I think I saw Councillor Nishikawa, was your hand up? Wanted to comment? It was, thank you. I'll go to you next. Someone trying to find me that resolution? We are, perfect. We're looking downstairs in the archives of paper product to try and pull it back up. The internet's a little bit slow here in Port Carling today, but stand by. We'll be there momentarily. Okay, let me unmute myself. There we go. So resolution number 1 was carried, and the original road allowance we put back to natural state. So I don't think that one's in question. Councillor Roberts, you wanted to discuss resolution 2 at this particular time?
I'd also like to clarify resolution number 1. Mr. Ackerman identified that the pre-existing 2020, it should be brought back to there. I think that we should look at the full path, because it is, whether it was Mr. Ackerman or the previous owner, they have that path and have appear to have used that path. So I think we need to say restored to the satisfaction of the township, rather than the existing 2020.
So Councillor Roberts, the resolution in front of us does restore it to its natural state at no cost to the township. So no reference to 2020. So
okay,
I think perfect. We're fine on that one. Let's move on to resolution number 2.
And resolution number 2, would you read it to me? Because I can't really see it very well.
Certainly. I'll just scroll down. Be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that approval be given for a license agreement for the encroachments of a sewer line, stairway, landing, and stone walkway, and the original allowance lying between yada, 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 that and that no further development be carried out and subject road allowance. That particular motion was defeated.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to break this into three pieces, or really two major pieces. And first of all, on our site visit, I want to really compliment Mr. Ackerman for the vegetation he has on his property. He has a lot of natural vegetation that he has planted himself. It's obvious, and it blends in quite well with the terrain. As per the path, there's a hedge that's up that he has put up, and you cannot see the neighboring property. I would think maybe 10 months of the year. During the wintertime, you probably could see it. I think that the pathway and the stairs are, in my opinion, are minor, and we should probably, and I would support license agreement on the two. On the final issue of sewage, I have given this a lot of thought. I've talked to experts, and I too pump sewage from my home up into my bed. And I know, and from what my observation and the conversation I had with an expert with the township, is that there can be the sewage line can be relocated onto the Ackerman property and and be pumped up to the bed. And the person I talked to saw that, suggested that, and I'm speaking for him or her, that there wouldn't be no dynamiting required. And since I do this on over rock, I believe it too. So I think that we should, in my opinion, ask for the sewage line to be moved onto Mr. Ackerman's property. So that's my input.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to Councillor Nishikawa first, and then Councillor Zavitz and Councillor Jagowitz. Ruth?
Thank you. Well, initially, when I had put my hand up initially, it was to support the Councillor Roberts and breaking down the resolution, I guess. I'm a little bit concerned that it's not clear for staff exactly what we're looking for when we do these things. So for instance, yes, the broad comment, put it back to the way it was. But again, I don't know what that is anymore because of, historically there's been lots that have gone on. And for instance, there was a discussion about trees and things like that. And therefore, are we going to ask for those trees to be removed? I, at the last meeting, supported item number 2, quite honestly. And I'm just going to say that, but I will certainly support the area councillors as they've done a much thorough investigation. But again, I don't have maybe some same concerns, except that it has to be very clear what we expect out of our staff because of the words that we as councillors use.
Okay, thank you for that. I think the resolution states that it would be put back to the satisfaction of a Director of Public Works and also in consultation with our planning staff. So they would be the ones who would be executing that. I'll go to Councillor Zavitz and then I'll circle back to the resolutions. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I wonder if I could direct this to our clerk. As I recall, sorry, I'm not going to recall. If you could refresh my memory in terms of the GNF meeting where this issue came to play, what was because I'm seeing defeated, approved. As far as I'm concerned, this thing was over. This was done. This item was, so if you could clarify for me as the chair of that particular meeting, I would appreciate it. Because I'm confused by what I'm seeing in terms of we're picking and choosing some things that were okay and some weren't. As I understand it, the whole thing was not approved. And in fact, we moved a motion, I thought, to simply ask the gentleman in question to remove everything. So I just like clarification on that because I have a second question if I could.
So I think the clerk can answer, but our resolutions are worded in the positive. So the resolution would have been to approve the license of occupation, would have been to remove the stairway, the pathway, and that's why there was two sections to this. So we approved, council did, we agreed with the remedy to the pathway, but to approve the license of occupation for the stairs and the sewer line, council did not support that, and that those two items were rejected by council. We're back here at council to either validate those two motions or to modify them as required. That's what the 30-day pause is between committee and council.
So if I might, thank you.
Mhm.
So if I might, I apologize then, because I thought that the issue was over and dealt with. And so here we are today. I would have thought this would have been, if I'd been approached, I would have, as a councillor, had to pull this out of the minutes of the GNF, but I guess not. And I'm confused by this process. Quite honestly, I appreciate Mr. Ackerman giving it the old survivor college try, but I'm concerned why we're dealing with this again today. Like we dealt with this, did we not?
So thank you, Councillor Zavitz. We have dealt with it at a committee level. It comes to council, Councillor Roberts. We had a delegation who wanted to speak to it in the minutes of today. And verbally in the meeting at present, though we like it ahead of time, Councillor Roberts is asking for some reconsideration on one of those particular motions that was made. So it was not done ahead of the meeting, which is ideal to the clerk. But unfortunately, again, we don't specify that it has to be done 48 hours or anything ahead of time. An individual councillor can try and amend a motion and ratification of our committee meeting minutes. Councillor Zavitz, final comment?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity. So then, given what you just said, I wonder if the clerk could tell me what the last and final motion was that was read that we voted on. Because we voted in the negative. We did not move it forward. So I'm trying to be difficult. But
there's two parts to the resolution. Part number one is we voted in the affirmative to have the pathway return to its naturalized state. The second portion of the meeting was to deal with the stairs, landing, and sewer line encroachments. To approve that, because we vote in the positive, and council or committee at the time rejected those two items. So that's why there are two separate line items as recommended by staff, that committee supported one of the directions and denied the other.
That's not my
Go to Councillor Jagowitz.
Appreciate it. That's not my recollection, but fine.
Thank you. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions of the applicant and would appreciate being allowed to ask them. First of all, your offer of restoring the path to the satisfaction of the township, is that an unconditional offer? So I've multiple questions. I'll do them one at a time. Is that offer unconditional, or is it conditional on us taking some decision on some other part of this resolution?
Councillor Jagowitz, if I may, council, our committee has passed a resolution to require them to restore it to its natural vegetated state already. That's section 1 of this resolution. So the question is almost moot at this particular point, unless anyone on committee or council at this particular point wants to overturn that recommendation from.
So then, with all due respect, has there been a time frame put on that restoration? And why hasn't that restoration already occurred?
So I'm going to turn to our director of maybe Public Works or Mr. Pink to talk about a restitution, because we have not ratified that resolution by council. So that's why none of the work has been done at this particular point. It's got to be a recommendation of council. If council recommends that today and agrees with our committee direction, Mr. Becking has turned on his monitor, and I think we'll be happy to answer when that work would need to be completed by.
Council, your worship, has not specified any time frame. We have not pressed for resolution of the matter because the applicant has applied to appeal or speak to the decision that committee made. So the decision has to be made by council to enact it, and then I would say that, you know, a reasonable time frame would be 60 to 90 days. Typically, vegetation, transplanting and the like should be done either in the spring or in the fall. I would suggest that it would be in the township's interest to be reasonable with the applicant, and so perhaps council might wish to consider a October 30 deadline to make the initial repairs.
So supplementary, just very briefly, it was my understanding that that pathway was recently put in for some purpose to accomplish some construction. Has that been completed then? And so what I hear Director Becking saying is that it will no longer be used and restored as soon as reasonably possible in cooperation. Is that correct? And there will be no more, it won't be used for any form of construction.
Councillor Jaglis, I believe if council is to recommend what Director Becking is saying, if council is to recommend the revegetation of that path, it would be immediate to start, but we would allow a 60, 90-day window, understanding depending on hiring a contractor or not, but it also has to be to the satisfaction of our Director of Public Works. So that work would start. Might be 30 days, might be 60 days. You never know. Right now, trying to get a contractor in Muskoka is difficult, but I could pretty much rest assured that that work would be done by the end of the year, and our staff would be insisting it be done accordingly. Okay. I'm going to go to Councillor Kelly at this particular time.
Thank you, and through you, I have a problem with process here. I must admit, I have not yet heard anybody withdraw this from the consent agenda. I'm told that Councillor Roberts has, but I missed that part. As a result, I don't know what we're talking about. We're halfway through this thing before I realize we're relitigating something that I thought we closed off on already at least once, maybe twice. If in fact it's been pulled and we've reopened it for discussion, I submit that any question is fair question, and Councillor Jagowitz has the right to ask the questions he wanted to ask. I just need some help understanding the process, because I don't know. I'm caught a little off guard that we are. I'm caught a little off guard that we are actually discussing this, de novo, if you will.
Okay. So thank you. If I can help qualify a little bit here, we've had a delegation today to discuss an item on our agenda. Councillor Roberts immediately raised his hand, who wanted to speak to the same item on the agenda. I have yet to separate anything. I was allowing council to comment, and basically it's a dialogue back with the applicant to get a flavor of whether or not council wanted to reconsider an item, at which point I would have asked a specific question, and I'm about to ask a specific question. We have two resolutions in front of us. The first of which is regarding the pathway, and I'm not getting any sense that any councillor wants to reconsider that. So we're going to move on, and it's again trying to deal with this accordingly. Councillor Roberts has suggested a separate perspective, and we don't need two councillors to request a change to that. Councillor Roberts has every right to discuss that at council. He was acting as a committee member 30 days ago when this item, as we all were, when this item was discussed at General and Finance back in June. So with that, that's why we're here having this particular discussion. And we can either ratify it, because once council votes on it, again, it becomes law, so to speak. Councillor Zavitz, comment?
Thank you, sir, through you. So I'm on the minutes that we would have reviewed had it been pulled out. And so I chaired this meeting. So what I'm reading is that Councillor Jagowitz requested that the main motion be separated to vote on the path independently. So resolution number, and I can give it to you if you wanted it, but of course our clerk has it. Councillor Kelly, Councillor Mazan, be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommend that the encroachment of a path on an original road allowance lying between Longview Investment be removed, and that the original road allowance be put back to its natural state at no cost to the township. That was carried. The second resolution, which followed, was Councillor Kelly, Councillor Mazan, be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that approval be given for a license agreement for the encroachment of a sewer line, a stairway, a landing, and a stone walkway on an original road allowance line between, in accordance with Township Council policy subject to, and that no further development be carried out on the subject original road allowance, and that once all conditions have been fulfilled, a bylaw be presented to council at a future meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the license agreement. That was defeated. So it was defeated. So, there's nothing, what's to talk about? Did we
Okay,
not?
so let me again help our council in this particular time. At committee, we either vote in favor or we vote against something. Council always has the purview to undo what committee has done. That's been our procedural bylaw. That's the way we've been operating for 2 years now. So in this particular case, I don't believe anybody was arguing resolution number 1 for the restitution of the road allowance. Councillor Roberts has raised a question, and I will specifically ask right now, Councillor Roberts, if you would like to vote on item number 2 separately and have it pulled from the meeting minutes to be discussed and voted on separately.
Yes, I would like to pulled on and voted on secondly, because I can just very quickly clarification. During the general finance, it sort of was rushed at the end, and we end up grouping all 3 into one resolution, which I didn't think was to happen. So this is why I want it pulled.
So thank you. You wanted to separate further, again, the stairs, landing, and the sewer line in particular. So I
Yes.
appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else like to comment at this particular time on this particular issue? Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to go ahead to the action item minutes, and we need to amend the GNF to remove item number. Help me here. And then we'll vote on that one separately right now, and it may get split.
Well, I have prepared motions because it was a defeated motion, so it's not recommended for action. It just gets, the minutes are just reflected that it was defeated when the minutes get passed. So this one's, I have them already. This one.
Just a moment, our clerk is amending our,
Well,
or providing comment. Hang on. Okay, we're going to have our clerk's department again try and revisit this in particular. One of the things I'm going to ask council in particular, and I appreciate Councillor Roberts bringing this up, that we can bring this up at the beginning of a meeting. I'm going to encourage council to at least give the clerk's department a 24-hour to 48-hour notice if something is being considered ahead of time, so that we're not having to deal with resolutions on the fly or amendments to resolutions on the fly. Is that fair, council? We're agreed. It's not in our procedural bylaw, but we do completely understand that. Give me 2 seconds just to have a conversation with the clerk here. I might be able to move forward. Hold on. Okay, council, I'm going to ask, I appreciate Councillor Roberts has asked this be voted on separately, and thank you for that. Because again, we're trying to back this up to a resolution. I'm just going to get a quick showing of hands of who would support Councillor Roberts in amending some of these recommendations from General and Finance Committee to deny the license of occupation. Who would like to change that license of occupation as recommended by General and Finance? Does anybody, I know Councillor Roberts certainly would. Does anybody else want to support him in that? Councillor Mazan, Bridgman, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we will certainly do that then. That's enough to consider it fully. Councillor Edwards and Jagowitz, did you have a comment on this particular item? But I think we need to turn to the clerk to get back.
Yes, if you don't mind. You know, it would be nice to give 24 hours notice. I realize that. But sometimes with the agendas all come out, we have over 1,000 pages to go through. You may not have 24 hours when you're reading all this stuff, and I just wanted to bring that to the mayor's attention, that sometimes, you know, you find something or somebody phone call, you get a phone call or something on it. So, you know, yes, I would try and bring it forward within 24 hours, but I wouldn't make that a steadfast rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jagowitz.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my comment was on the similar vein. You made a statement and it sounded like you were creating a council rule, and then you said we're all in agreement. I was not in agreement with it because I don't even understand what you said. So I'd appreciate if you want to change the rules, bring them forward in a proper fashion.
Okay, sorry, I don't think I was changing a rule, but we'll go on. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Respectfully, I would ask you if perhaps there's an appetite for council to actually review this at a further meeting of General Finance. Because there seems to be a lot of information that needs to come forward. And I personally would prefer to have that information ahead of time to just discuss. And so again, I would just ask if what the rest of council feels at this time.
So that's a good suggestion. Again, we need to split this motion procedurally to deal with meeting minutes from General and Finance. So we will do that, but we may refer this back or for a 30-day pause. It may get referred back to General and Finance. There would be many options that could be done in the second portion of our General and Finance Committee meeting minutes. So our clerk is going to try and work her way through that. Madam Clerk, I'm just wondering if we want to move on. We do have an invited delegation at 1:30 that's probably on the line and waiting, and we could possibly move through to that and then circle back to this, if that's okay with you. Okay, Council. We're going to let in Ms. Stevens, I think, and I'm not sure if Tina's with her. Who else is with them? Check my notes. Oh, I'm lost. Yeah, please let them in. Yep, I believe CIO Stevens and Tina Kilbourne, who's our CUI team lead. We'll welcome them in, and they're going to talk about our OPP detachment boards. There's Julie. Good afternoon, Julie. And waiting for Tina. It's coming in. And you guys have a PowerPoint, I believe. Okay, we'll put that up in a second. Just, oh, there's Tina. I see Tina. I don't see Tina. There she is. Welcome. Julie, Tina, I will turn the meeting over to you. And you ready for your PowerPoint? We can put that on the screen as well.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor Harding. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to just, I can't see everybody while this is on, so I will, maybe we'll take it down at the very end so I can see everybody's faces. But thank you so much for letting us be here and consulting with you today. So as you know, I've been before you before. So my name's Julie Stevens, CAO for the District of Muskoka. And as well, we've got Tina Kilbourne. And I just wanted to say up front, Tina's been the one doing all the research and background reports for the Finance and Corporate Services Committee at the district. And so really thank her for all of her contributions in this one. And really, we're here before you today because the province has mandated that we create an OPP board for each of the detachments in Muskoka. And so we'll go into a bit more detail on it. Next slide. So we're going to review the Community Safety and Policing Act. as it's related to the OPP detachment boards. We'll look at the composition requirements as well as the district's proposal. Then the concept of the feedback that we're receiving or getting from the lower tier municipalities, and then next steps. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Okay, so within March 2019, the province passed Bill 68, which then created the Community Safety and Policing Act, or CSPA. And the Solicitor General has now come back to municipalities with regulations in order to put that into force in early 2022. I mean, that's their goal. When we've asked them specifically when this is happening, they haven't really come back to us with the specific deadlines. But that was the goal originally when they came out with the regulations. Within the CSPA, Section 67 addresses civilian governance, and that's where the detachment board factors into it. And so they've made the requirement that for there must be a board for each OPP detachment that's providing policing to municipalities and First Nations. So this is a new framework. They did have boards in the past, but it was sort of at the discretion of the municipality if they wanted to form one based on how they dealt with the OPP under the original Police Services Act. And this is definitely new work for the District of Muskoka as far as the administration of these boards. Next slide. So to give some context for all of you as far as what this looks like, policing within Muskoka is all done through the OPP, but there are 3 detachments that service the municipalities and First Nations. So we've got the OPP Detachment Board, or Detachment, which is what we're talking about today, and it services 2 towns, 2 townships, as well as 2 First Nations. And then the second one is the Huntsville OPP Detachment, and it services the towns of Huntsville and Lake Bay, so quite a bit smaller and less complex. And then the third one is the Southern Georgian Bay Detachment, and it services the towns of Midland and Penetanguishene and the township of Tiny and Tay Township, as well as the southern portion of Georgian Bay. And then it also has Beausoleil First Nations. So, you know, I think Muskoka is one of the few municipalities that has 3 detachment boards that services its policing. Most municipalities elsewhere, it's 1 detachment that would service their municipality. Next slide. So as far as background goes, the district as the upper tier is responsible for policing, and based on the information from the province, the district will have the administrative responsibility for both the Huntsville and the Bracebridge detachment boards. So, and when you think about it, there are open meetings, there's going to be the involvement of creating agendas, all of the live streaming, transparency, that sort of thing. So we'll have responsibility for that. In relation to the Southern Georgian Bay, because there's other municipalities that are not within the District of Muskoka, will be a partner to that board and more participatory in nature as far as full administration. The province did some consultation in early 2022 and have come out, they've provided flexibility in this, but they've also given some minimums. And the minimums required for the detachment board is that there's a minimum of 5 members, 20% community representation, and 20% provincial representation. And the provincial representation will be appointed by the ministry. At this point, we don't have to identify who is going to be on the board, but we do have to identify the number of seats and the composition. Next slide. So purpose, why are we doing this? Why is the province doing this? And really, it's all established within the CSPA. There's some parts that we don't know yet, but generally speaking, their framework or their principles are that they wanted to provide for greater civilian governance. And so they wanted to ensure that municipalities and First Nations had the opportunity to represent their local needs, perspectives, and priorities. And then the second part was providing an opportunity for enhanced collaboration between municipalities and First Nations to enhance community safety. And then the last one was about being more transparent and coordinated and more efficient in the delivery of police services. Next slide. So this slide, we added this slide after some of our previous consultations with the towns and townships. And it really shows the overall governance perspective of the board and how it fits in. So ultimately, the OPP detachment boards, it's an advisory function. So you can see at the bottom of the slide, there's a dotted line that shows advisory relationship and then a solid line that shows a reporting relationship. And so the advisory board is on, or sorry, the OPP detachment boards, you can see have a dotted line to the OPP detachment as well as into the OPP Governance Advisory Council. And that will be a provincial body, so one across the entire province, and then through that body into the Solicitor General. Conversely, the OPP detachment from a reporting perspective will report into the OPP Commissioner and then into the Solicitor General. And so what we know is that the OPP detachment boards will not be involved in the operational matters of the OPP detachment. It will be an advisory capacity. And so the next slide shows a bit more on that. So if you want to go to that next slide, great. And so you can see here, the first bullet, it talks about consulting on the selection of the detachment commander. The next one is about helping to determine objectives and priorities in consultation with the detachment commander. So definitely this advisory capacity you can see when you look at these roles and responsibility. Be part of monitoring the performance of the detachment commander and providing that information forward. Reviewing reports on how the detachment is doing as far as the goals go. And then the other one that's really interesting to me is this considering any community safety and well-being plan and how that is reflected as far as local needs into what the detachment is doing. And so the district's responsible for doing this first community safety and well-being plan. We've just awarded it maybe I think a couple of months ago. We're going to start the consultation phase for that to really develop that plan. And so this is the way that I see some of the questions that we've had from other municipalities when we've been consulting is how do we get more effective? How do we get more cohesive? And I think this plan is going to help us with that because it's a plan for the entire district, and all of the boards will be required to consider that. And so that allows the opportunity for a coordinated effort. And then the last one's providing an annual report to municipalities and band councils related to the provision of services, police services. Next slide. So the district and through Tina did a lot of research on what other boards have looked like in the past. As I mentioned at the top, there were they were called Section 10 boards under the previous Police Service Act. So how did those act? What was the composition like? We did some conversations and researching on the functionality of those. And we also did research on with the ministry of what they were thinking and envisioning. And so based on all of that consultation and outreach, the staff came forward with sort of 3 principles of how we thought composition should be reflected. And so the first one was really to reflect the ministry's preferences and to ensure a streamlined approach. The recommendation is that there would be 1 board per OPP detachment, and that size of that board would be kept as small as possible to promote efficient decision making. And then the last part was that the representation should be spread equally across the municipalities and First Nations. The one thing before I go on to the next slide, I do want to say that from a First Nations perspective, within the Act, there is a specific part where the First Nations can choose to be a party to the municipal police board, or they can choose to create their own board. And so we're in consultation with our First Nations, and we don't have anything yet, but expect that we'll hear back from them of whether they agree with the principles or the feedback that we've given in the proposal that goes forward, or if they think there should be other considerations, or whether they want to set up their own board, which would be, their administration and responsibility to do. So that's ongoing. Next slide. So here we get to sort of the meat of the district's proposed composition. And so on the left-hand side, you can see is option 1. And that was the option that was proposed towards the Finance and Corporate Services Committee last month. And it's a board size of 8, which you can see sort of in the middle. And the thinking with this one, again, it was trying to, if you remember those principles we talked about from composition, it was one board, obviously, which is what we're doing per detachment, reduced size, and then equal representation across the municipalities. And so what we've got here, as you can see, is that we're saying that to reduce the size, in order to facilitate that, a municipality would have either one elected official or one community member, and that the position would rotate with the terms of them. So for example, Muskoka Lakes would have an elected official the first term, and then the second term they would nominate a community rep. And so that way we're reducing the number of people that are sitting around the table. And then it also, because the size is reduced, it also reduces the requirement for the provincial appointee, so it reduces that number as well. And then option 2 came forward as a result of staff coming forward with at the meeting last cycle in Finance and Corporate Services. There was a desire to look at another model which had equal representation still between the municipalities, but it would be an elected official and community member for each lower tier municipality. And so that obviously increases the size quite a bit. So it's 15. And it would also increase the number of provincial representatives. And the one thing I will say is that the model option 2 is similar to what we are proposing for the Huntsville board. OPP board. Mind you, it only has 2 municipalities, so we had to do that model to actually achieve the lowest number. So it's got a minimum number of 5 on its board. And then as well, it is the same, this model would be the same as what is being proposed for the Southern Georgian Bay, where we're acting with the other CAOs, putting forward reports for the Southern Georgian Bay detachment as well. So just additional information there for you. So next slide. Appointing seats. And so the recommendation is that that the elected official that sits on the board would be the head of the lower tier municipality, or they can appoint an alternate district councillor. And as well that the elected officials and community members would be nominated by the lower tier and then appointed by resolution to district council. And this is obviously in the case of the municipalities. The First Nations, it would be nominated by the band council. I'll also say that one municipality said, so why are we saying that it has to be a district councillor? And from staff's perspective, what we were thinking was this was the nice ability to sort of coordinate, because the district councillors sit at the lower tier, they're getting the information of the local needs, and as well, they understand the district complexities as well. So we thought that was a nice marry up of those two to make it a district councillor that would sit. Obviously, that would be the mayor or an alternate district councillor. Next slide. So sort of next steps, I talked about how we're in consultation. So we'll continue those consultations with Moose Deer Point and Wata Mohawks First Nations to see what their perspective is, if they agree in principle with the consultation, or sorry, with the proposal that we put forward. And then we'll compile all the information that we've garnered from all the lower tier municipalities and make recommendations to the district committee and council for approval. And then once we have that, we'll submit our final composition proposals to the ministry. We are late. This was supposed to be done and finalized by June 7th. We've asked for an extension. They were amenable to that. We've also acknowledged that, that consultation with First Nations could extend that timeline, and they are also aware and amenable to that as well. And then following all that, staff really needs to get its ducks in a row about the administration, resourcing, and funding. So we expect during the 2022 budget that we'll have to bring forward the staffing requirements to make this all happen. As I mentioned, the administration is going to be more significant given the fact that we're going to be participating on 3 different boards. We have asked for a delegation at AMO related to funding, and I know a lot of other municipalities as well have done that too, and that AMO has made that point to the province as well, that basically they're downloading a pretty significant chunk of work on municipalities to deal with. I think maybe the approach that we'll take from a district perspective is that we're unique because we're funding not just 1 board, but 3 boards, and see if that has any impact on them. And really that is the conclusion. Maybe if we can go to the next slide, I am seeking feedback, consultation from this group. And so we weren't looking for a motion of council. We were just seeking sort of individual feedback from each of the councillors if they're comfortable on the perspective, what option do they prefer? Are there any questions they have? Anything that they want to suggest that maybe we didn't think of? And turn it back to you. The last slide is about further information, and you can click on those links as you see fit. And so back to you for any questions, Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much, Julie. Appreciate it. Maybe we can go back to the Zoom screen. We'll see everybody. And I see Councillor Hayes has her hand in the air. Then Councillor Zavitz. Donaldo.
Yes, through you to Julie. I prefer the 15-member council. I think that you would get better information from different perspectives. And I would also wonder why the person would have to be a district councillor, because we may be not allowing people with specific backgrounds that could be advantageous to this group by saying that it must be a district councillor. I think if it could be the councillor in that area that has the best perspective on what they have, I think by putting that restriction on it, you've actually bound us in some way. So those are the only 2 things that I would suggest.
Through you, Mayor, if I could just add maybe one thing there. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. And we are hearing fairly similarly that the 15 size board is what the preference is for a number of different factors. Other thing, as far as the district councillor goes, these are going to be open meetings, right? So I do have to say that, other councillors could attend, and if their concerns weren't being met, then I think there's an opportunity to manage that through the process as well. So I want to encourage you on that one too, that I think there's maybe another way to manage those complexities.
Okay.
Could I have a follow-up?
Certainly.
Another consideration would be your district councillors are already doing double duty by doing lower tier meetings and upper tier meetings. And by adding another upper tier meeting that can only be attended by a district councillor, that's adding to their workload. Whereas the lower tier ones may have more time to do a more fulsome review.
Okay, thank you. Julie, I'm just going to ask a quick question because Councillor Hayes flagged it. Could a lower tier councillor serve as a citizen member in addition?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And the answer is no. So I'm glad you said that, because I meant to say that after the first one. So community members must be not elected officials and not municipal employees. Those are the only 2 stipulations that they make.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz, then Councillor Jagwitz.
Thank you. Through you, typically, hi, Julie, and typically a great presentation from you. We come to expect those. I have a higher level question. I will respond to you myself on some of the things you've asked today. So thank you for those questions. I guess my thought would be, I would support anything that would create some sort of what I would call better communication. Many are skeptical of our OPP, not force, but our service level in this township. And I can tell you, other than getting speeding tickets, there was 3 OPP on the road today on my way back from Port Carling. Other than that, that's the first I've seen them from them in quite some time. I think there's a bigger question here, and that is, I would look to you, because you've obviously the one with the most experience in this as the CAO of the district. Are we assured, and or what assurances do we have that any of these board sizes will actually enhance our police servicing, the actual on the ground boots? Thank you.
Really?
Thank you. So I think, you're right. We spend a lot of money on policing. We really do. I still think it's the most effective method of policing in the province, and so I can definitely I can tell you that from other reporting that I've done and seen across other policing that's done on a municipal level. So are they doing the things we want them to do? I think that's exactly what this board is going to help us define, right? Because it's about getting the local priorities. What would be interesting to me is that, again, that tie-in with the community safety and well-being. I think that's an excellent way for us to say, from a metric perspective, are we covering off what we need to there? We've heard from the people. What do we think they need to be feeling safe, or to enhance community safety? And really holding people, how does that relate to the policing factor? And so I think I really do actually think this board is going to help with that education process and the transparency about what the police are working on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to CAO Stevens. Thanks for your presentation. As you know, I'm on the Finance Committee, and so I have gotten involved in this. But I have two questions for you, Julie. And I was involved very early on in 2019. These boards, after the legislation was passed and when they were trying to get through the rules. And has something changed, Julie? Because my understanding of Section 67 was that it prefers one board for detachment, but it allows for more than one. So I have multiple questions. Would you agree or disagree that having more than one board for a detachment is not ruled out?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. My understanding is that there will be the flexibility to allow for a second board, but they've been really clear that it's about geography or First Nations. So First Nations get to just make that decision, absolutely. And then the other only example they give is geography, meaning that in the north, we know that some of them, a detachment board might service, and I don't actually know the number, but a massive geography. And so, a board member would have to travel 2 hours to get to a site to be able to do that board meeting. So in those situations, they're saying, let's facilitate or allow for having two different boards for that detachment. But definitely the province has indicated that their preference is one board and that they will challenge any rationale, and they are mandating consultation as well related to the proposals that are coming forward. So I guess that's the feedback that I would give to you, Councillor, based on what we've heard from the province. Oh, the other thing I will say is that based on their information is that they've told us is that the district is responsible for the administration. And so it would require the district to approve a second board if that was, it would have to be part of the district's proposal and approval to move that forward, a second board.
So supplementary, yes, so you've kind of explained my understanding that they prefer one board, but they will look at two. And if, for example, TML wanted to have its own board, it would have to coordinate with the district and bring the proposal for it. But there is a provision for that to be looked at. That doesn't mean it would be approved. So going on to my second part, and that again is my long experience at the district, which is only 2.5 years. I know some people have many more. And I've sat on the committee that has been responsible for policing. And basically, the district has taken a hands-off approach on policing. It essentially accepts the minimum standard. And so I see this as some hope for us to change that. And so my question to you is, since TML is only serviced by the Bracebridge board, that's the only board it has an interest in. And if it sits there with 5 other municipalities or 4 other municipalities, how will TML be able to bring forward the fact that it may want a different level of service? It may want a totally different level of service that's appropriate for some other area. And I see that very difficult to achieve, because in your proposal, the one that came from staff, basically TML would get 1/2 a representative. They get one every other term. So hoping that you would think about that. And since policing is more effective at the local level, that I agree with the previous councillor, who said, well, maybe this is more a local thing, and maybe the district should be a coordinator rather than the leader of the band. So I know that's not a very convoluted question, but I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. And so I guess in this instance, I really feel like the district councillor also wears the lower tier municipality hat, and so brings both of those responsibilities. So that's how I, as staff, that's how we feel about it, and that's why we brought it forward that way. But we'll take your feedback for that consideration and put that into the mix as far as reporting back to committee. As far as your question about level of service, so the district currently pays for the base level of service with for the OPP. We don't have additional contracted services. We can contemplate that, quite frankly, at any time we so choose. And so if the board gave consideration for, in the board model, and it doesn't really matter what the functionality of the board is, whether it's the 8 member or 15 person member or member board. If there was a concerted thought that, you know what, we really want to bring back additional resources for X, whatever that local priority is. And the detachment commander says, you know what, two things. He could say, he or she, right now it's he's for what we've got. He could say, you know what, I think I can facilitate that within my base level of service already. Then the board can make that a priority for themselves and measure based on that. If they say, you know what, we really can't facilitate that, so then at that point, that goes back to district, because that's about paying extra additional funding for OPP, which is something that we have contemplated in the past. As you recall, and certainly the members that have been here in previous terms of council at the district will know that we did have additional contracted services that we did, but we cut those when they moved to the new policing model, billing model. And so that would be, Councillor, how I would say that would be facilitated through the board and then to district council. I would also suggest that if through the board it didn't get passed and the board member felt significantly about it, you could raise it at district council as well, right? Or through Finance and Corporate Services Committee, because the funding mechanism is at the district level. So I think there's two opportunities there for you.
So just one final, Mr. Chair, it's not a question, it's just a comment on that. When we talk about different service levels, I understand that because the district pays between 15 and 16 million and people don't want to tack on extra costs. But if in fact a lower tier was represented at a board, its cost of that share of that must be much lower. So in other words, in TML's case, it could opt for a higher level of service, but the overall cost would be lower. And that's where I see the conflict. And that's frankly why I'm going to be, and this isn't a question, when I give my report on that meeting later on in this meeting, I'm going to be asking TML to take a look at its own position and how it might want to fit into this. I agree we should work with the district, but I think TML has to also look at what's best for their residents too. And so I appreciate you coming today and sharing that information with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jagowitz. And I think Julie's also definitely got your comments, and we'll continue to hear your comments at Finance Committee. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I will take a little bit of a different approach than Councillor Jagowitz, although I completely understand where he's coming from. I was actually okay with the 15, and in fact, I'm just going to pick sides. I looked at, so West Muskoka has been severely underserviced as far as policing goes. I could step out on 169 and see cars zipping through Bala at 100 clicks an hour, and you won't see a police officer for days. So, I mean, that's our reality over here. But what I did see was the opportunity. So, for instance, are there cohorts from Georgian Bay, for instance? We have a little bit stronger strength with the breakup, I guess, of having different boards. I think that the financial end of it is a very different discussion from Muskoka Lake's perspective. And in fact, I would hope that moving forward, we would actually set aside a whole educational piece of what for other counselors, for our own counselors, to understand where we've been. Like in the past, for instance, we used to have to pay for having the policing for the key on top of. So we couldn't even get police officers to be here during the summertime, and we had to pay for that, those extra costs. We subsequently stopped that. I think it was like 2012 or something like that. But it's again, just, I think that there's a bigger history that also others should understand that we wouldn't be able to achieve through this meeting. But I actually happen to like the 15 members and the way that it's currently laid out. It also, I guess for me personally, I know those folks from Moose Deer. I know those folks from Wada. I know those folks from Georgian Bay. I feel there's an opportunity for whatever counselor ends up being. There's a great opportunity to work with those people. I'll just say that we wouldn't be working in opposition. It's not, well, you're going to take away services from our area, and I don't see that being, so I just look forward to this going forward. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else, any comments? Julie, Tina, thank you very much. Obviously, this is me coming back. I'll just add my 2 cents. I would agree the 15-member board, I think, is the way to go as we move forward. And obviously, our council may or may not chime in with additional comments to be able to be provided to district council as this moves forward. But thank you for your time today, and sorry we're a little bit late in moving on. So
okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Council, we have, our clerk's department has been able to split a resolution regarding the Ackerman property. And the first of which I'm going to deal with would be, we've split it down to one of them to deal with the sewer line. Already recommended by committee is to remove the road and return the road allowance back to natural state. So there's no changes. As soon as we approve the minutes, that would be approved. But in this particular case, Councillor Roberts has asked that the sewer line and the stairway landing stone walkway be split to have a discussion on that. Again, all of this was defeated at committee level. And I've got one resolution to approve or deny the sewer line and one also for the stairs and landing. Councillor Zavitz has a question.
Thank you, and through you, I meant to throw a screw into the works here, but quite honestly, I would prefer, and again, it's just me right here and now, but I would prefer if this whole matter would come back to general finance in August. I think for us to, but now we're picking low-hanging fruit, and we still have this thing to deal with anyway. I don't know why we just don't all bring it back, pause, take our time, look at it, think about it. I understand Councillor Roberts' perspective, as I do others, but I'm not feeling really comfortable with this. And if I have to vote, I might just vote no. And so I think, given more information, we've heard the information. I need time to digest it, please. And so I guess based on that, I would ask it come back to GNF, the whole thing. Thank you.
You're asking for a deferral, and that's fine. I appreciate that. I will remind council that this has come twice already to committee that got us here today. So we can send it back to committee if that's the wishes of people. The first resolution that I was going to be considering is that of the sewer line and the potential removal of the sewer line from the district road allowance. And let me just ask right now, just try and get a nodding of heads, because I would like to try and move some business forward. Is anybody wanting to move the sewer line in particular back to committee for further debate and discussion, or are you okay to approve or deny the sewer line at this particular time? The resolution on the table right now would be to approve the license of occupation with the sewer line. If we were to turn it down, then they would have to be removing the sewer line. So I'm seeing some shaking of heads. You would prefer this to come back to committee, or would you like to vote on it right now? I see some shaking and I see some nodding. So Councillor Kelly, you want to comment?
I realize it's been to committee twice before. Both times we had delegations from the other side of the property line. And I think in the interest of fairness and given the new information it needs to go back to committee and let that any other interested party have something to say.
Okay, Councillor Jagowitz. I need you to unmute. Frank, you're muted.
Sorry, I believe with Councillor Kelly, other than I believe the first part having to do with the road should go forward. It was denied. I think it should go forward. I don't think there's any more discussion on that. And if the other three items can go back to committee and allow everybody to chew at them, that would be my preference.
Okay. Council, I'm getting a perspective that we want to refer all of this back to committee. We're going to defer decision on this today.
No.
Councillor Roberts,
No,
sorry.
we're not deferring the first part. At least that's my
Correct. We are going to approve the removal and the restitution to the road allowance, but the stairway, the sewer line, the landing, and the stone walkway would get referred back to General and Finance Committee next month. Councillor Bridgman.
I'm probably getting caught up in all this conversation. I would like to deal with the sewer line today, and then if committee feels really strong, council, about moving the other parts back, I'm good with that. I don't understand why we're taking the sewer line back again, because quite frankly, we're the property next door. We're not the neighbors either. So I'm just having trouble understanding that. I thought I'd let you know. I'd be willing to vote on the sewer line today.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, I see would like to vote on the sewer line today. Does anybody else want to vote on the sewer line today? I'm only seeing two people, so unfortunately, we're going to refer all of this back, and our council or committee will deal with this again in 30 days. Madam Clerk, you're okay with that? How do we make an appropriate note in the minutes, with the exception of these particular items, I believe, correct? I am getting a hint. The council, I'm going to just get a nodding of heads of how many people would like to send this back to General and Finance Committee, and that is the sewer line, the stairway, the landing, and the stone walkway. We have consensus, Madam Clerk, that these two are going back. Thank you very much. We're going to send those back. We're going to defer reading of those. The actual minutes of the meeting, do I need to make reference, or we'll just make a note that those two items were referred back? Thank you. Back to our regular programming, and that is the approval of some minutes. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the Mayor and Council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the July 14th, 2021 consent agenda, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. June 16th, 2021 General Finance Committee meeting minutes and action items 1, 3, 7, and 9. And just a note that we have just deferred two items back, or referred two items back to General and Finance out of those meeting minutes. Also June 16th, 2021 council minutes, June 17th, 2021 planning committee minutes, and action items 1 to 13. Any comments, questions? Councillor Edwards, we had a question. The clerk is advising me that you may have wanted one other item pulled on the application McDonald. Or are you okay to let it go as stands?
I would like that actually discussed, and that we gave a bridge because they didn't want to come in from Purdy Road, and they're already coming in from Purdy Road. We've seen bylaw that has been out there. It's not just like a single lane road in there. It's major, and that would have been taken. I'd like to know what they plan on doing crossing that bridge. There's been no application for severances or anything else like that, so I don't know if that bridge is actually required now until I know what's going on with that property. It's massive, and now we look at Sugarloaf Island. I would put that along the same line as that blasting in there. So I'd like to know what they're doing with it, and that before we give final approval.
Councillor Edwards, what particular, do we have the, Madam Clerk, do we have the resolution number or the item? Mr. Pink, David.
Thank you, Worship. I just thought I would clarify, as Councillor Edwards did note, bylaw enforcement staff did go out to investigate the complaint. The road that is being constructed is to an adjoining property, further to the east or north. I do not believe there's a road connecting to the proposed bridge. That's the subject of the action item before you. Hopefully that helps clarify. In order to find any further details as to the property owner's intent, we would have to reach out to them and likely cause a delay if that's the wish of council.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. When I was talking with and that the bylaw officer and that Rob Kennedy, he indicated it was very, very close. He couldn't tell if it was 200 feet or not from Clark's Pond, but it was very, very close. So this is why I just wanted to know, because I know the terrain there is very high on that side of the pond.
Thank you for that. Let me just circle back, as what I heard Mr. Pink say is the proposed bridge is to adjoin a different property to where this road is built. Is that correct? So they both may be required, Mr. Pink?
He owns all of those properties, Mr. Mayor.
I understand that he owns all the properties, but he requested a bridge or between the two properties. Mr. Pink, is there any contravention of the bylaw in joining the two roads?
The works that are occurring are very close to contravening the site alteration and tree preservation bylaw as being within 200 feet. I believe it's still under some investigation. But again, the resolution to be considered to be enacted by council is to approve of a license to construct a bridge, and that road is to a different property. It is not to this. I believe the access to that lot in question will continue to be by the bridge. An adjoining property further to the east is to be accessed by the road under construction.
Okay, and if I may, that our bylaw enforcement will be determining whether there are contraventions to the bylaw on the road construction. And if there are contraventions, we would be obviously charging accordingly and having those rectified. But the bridge is a mutually exclusive application to join a different property. So they potentially would still need that as they came to us in application. Seeing nodding of heads. Councillor Nishikawa, you want to comment?
Well, essentially, you had made those comments. I felt that we, or at least I, paid great attention to this particular one, and my understanding was that it was about the other property. If there's a contravention, like I would say, you almost can check up every building permit that we take out, that we see, to ensure that everyone is doing what they can, doing everything right. And often that doesn't happen. So I understand Councillor Edwards' concerns, but I don't believe that I'm asking for this to be held up, because in fact it was dealing with, we were okay with what was to doing. If there's other issues, I believe our staff can deal with that at that. But essentially, I would like to move this application forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards, understanding that the bridge construction is again to join a different property and the road construction is adjoining a different property. Are you okay with it being read within the minutes, or do you want to vote it on separately?
It's up to council. I'd like to see it held up until we know exactly what is going on, because the owner owns all sides of that Clark's Pond, and it could be subdivision going in there at some point. And like I say, knowing it, and that is very, very high on that side. How they'll ever get cottages in there and that down to the water, and that. But it's just a case. It's up to the committee. But I don't want to err on the wrong side. That's all. I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. We do have a separate resolution to deal with the item separately. Madam Clerk, I have read the original resolution. Am I okay to go back and read this one? We're gonna set the first one aside on the table, and I'm gonna go back to Councillor Edwards to talk about whether or not we want to refer this back, or do we want to vote on accordingly. Councillor Zavitz has his hand in the air.
Thank you, and through you, I would. There we go. Sorry, thank you, and through you, I would certainly support Councillor Edwards on this particular issue. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a separate resolution moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the following recommendation be enacted for action: June 16th, 2021, General Finance Committee action items GFC for 16-6-21, which is a license agreement application for McDonald Rule 224-7240, and that is to construct a bridge to between two of his properties. It doesn't have anything to do with a road to the other property. And I will ask council at this time, do we want to refer this back to our planning committee, or do we want to vote on it today? Maybe a show of hands as to who would like to refer this back to planning committee. Oh, I've got to vote on it. Well, no, because I can ask for a deferral. May I not? Okay. So just sorry, my apologies. We would potentially be considering an amendment to refer this back to planning. May I ask who would like to refer this back to planning as a general and finance? Councillor Edwards wants to go back to general and finance on this. Councillor Zavitz does. Councillor Hayes and Councillor Roberts. I'm okay to move this forward. Anybody who wants to continue moving this forward accordingly? As is, as a separate 1, 2, 3. We've got a few people who haven't voted. So we're not going to get anything moving forward. Okay. Councillor Kelly, you wanted to make a comment, and Councillor Nishikawa.
Oh, sorry, through you. It was just a question. I think I misunderstood the first question, because at one point you said refer back to planning, and then I heard refer back to general and finance. So
my apologies. I thought it was going to planning committee. The question would be to refer this back to general and finance committee and not provide approval because it came through G and F. I thought it came through planning. So we would be referring this back to general and finance committee that we already approved last general and finance committee again, and we can discuss it one more time. How many people would be interested in referring this back to general and finance committee? If you are not in favor of that, then we're going to vote on this motion today. May I ask how many people are interested in moving this back to general and finance? 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to amend this and refer back to G and F. Correct. And not enact. Thank you. So the June 16th General Finance Committee action item GF 16-621 license agreement would be referred back to GNF and not enacted. Any further comments or questions? I see Councillor Nishikawa first of all has her hand up, and then Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. I guess the bigger question for me is that I heard a concern. I'm trying to understand the relationship between what was applied for and what we approved, and now the concerns moving forward and how they relate to the application process. So, because I hear it as two very separate things. There is a bylaw issue, perhaps the tree bylaw issue is one thing. But in fact, I guess I'm just not a lawyer. So my concern is that we have a full understanding of why we're not approving this application going forward. And like, don't the two have to be related in some way? I don't see the relationship between holding up an application that was already permitted when in fact we're just guessing about how the person was going to use the property. And in fact, he explained that at the last meeting. That's what I'd heard. So I'm just trying to understand the position that we're putting ourselves in as a council, that we're not creating any legal issues by holding up an application for a discussion that isn't about that particular application. So thank you.
Duly noted. Duly noted. So the resolution amended would be to refer the approval of this, or to further approval of this, back to GNF. We can approve that amendment, or we can then vote on it and move it forward. If you want to send this back to GNF and put a pause on it for theoretically 60 days, because it would go to GNF and then come back to council 60 days from now, we can deal with it at that particular time. Otherwise, we can not support the deferral and we can vote on the resolution today. Councillor Zavitz has a comment, then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, or Mayor and Chair, that I do think there's new information. And again, while we're here in this voting process, I think it's incumbent on us as a group to listen to councillors who have had boots on the ground. We've entertained thoughts from Councillor Roberts, Councillor Mazan earlier as it relates to another issue. I think it's very important that when we use our terms of reference, Mayor, and respectfully, that we don't say like we were going to talk about it again. To my mind, we're not talking about it again. What we're doing is we're continuing the dialogue and the discussion on an issue that would appear to perhaps need some more discussion. So respectfully, I would ask that it goes back to GNF for that reason. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, you want to comment?
I would agree with Councillor Zavitz and that, as it was stated before, you don't want to guess at this. So I'd like to know what it is, maybe a site plan for it and that before we just say, yeah, run a bridge across. And that, so that's why I'm asking for it. And I hope it goes back to planning. Thank you.
Okay. It's going to go back to General and Finance is where it came, and that's where it would be referred back to. So the resolution is on the table with an amendment, and that is to refer this item back to General and Finance Committee. Moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Kelly. I will ask all in favor of referring this back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyone opposed? I'm opposed, and 2 opposed. Madam Clerk, that's carried. It's referred back as amended. Correct?
It's just referred back.
It's just referred back to GNF. No, pardon me? Well, I amended the resolution because I read it.
Sorry.
Not amending anything. Thank you very much. Okay. Apologize. The back to the resolution that we had set on the table.
That's going to be amended now. So 1, 3, and then 4, and then 5 to 7. 1, 3, 5 to 7, and 9.
Okay. So we are going to back to moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that Mayor and Council adopt and enact the following minutes. And that would be June 16th, 21 General and Finance Committee meeting minutes and action items 1, 3, 5 to 7, and 9, as well as our council meeting minutes from June 16th and June 17th Planning Committee meetings, action items 1 to 13. All those in favor? Okay, that is approved. Councillor Jagowitz checking with his lawyer whether he can approve that or not. There we go. Council, we're going to take a 10-minute break right now because I think we all need a little mental holiday, and then we will come back in 10 minutes. So 3:31. Thank you. Doing this. Okay, let's try and get council back here. Let's see if we can play catch up a little bit. We are about an hour and a half behind right now for our 2 o'clock invited delegation. Item 8D, council, we are going to move towards. And we had hit a Z yet? Not yet. Should be 2. We got a Z on the last one. Thank you. Okay. Director Becking and council. Item 8D, which is our Bala Bridge. And thank you, Director Becking, for the updated diagrams. They were very helpful, I think, for everybody. Would probably agree. Ken, over to you for a quick high-level overview, and then we'll go to Emma, I think, who may need to be here to help us.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, members of council. You'll recall that we came forward with a short or small number of design concepts for your consideration at your last meeting. The sense that we got from council was that you had a number of questions and you would prefer to see an expansion on those design concepts. And so to that end, our consultant, Emma Wilkinson from Tatham Consultants, is with us this afternoon. She and her crew have prepared a number of, or expanded on the number of alternatives to give you a better feel for what the possibilities might be. And I think at that point, I'll turn it over to Emma and she can walk you through the alternatives.
Thank you, Director. If someone could put up our slides for us.
It's just coming up right now. Here we go.
Okay, great. So as you'll see in this package, we've come up with a few renderings to illustrate the concept options that have been investigated. And there's also some additional concept features that go along with those base concepts. So it basically boils down to 2 concept options. The first being a 3-span option and the second being a 5-span option. You may notice in the staff report, we did investigate a single span going from one abutment to the other, but due to the constraints for the bridge to the north for the railway crossing, it's not possible to do much in raising the road profile. And to get a single span structure, you need a fairly deep girder and a thick bridge cross section, which reduces your hydraulic capacity to the point where it wouldn't be a recommended solution. The increase in flooding whenever the higher storm events occur would just not be recommended. So again, we proceeded with these 2 concepts, the 3-span and the 5-span. As you'll see as we get into them, the costs associated with these are noted on the slides, but they are also noted in the township staff report. The 3 and 5 base options. If you want to move to the next slide, this is just the existing bridge, and this is the
Emma, is there a particular slide that you want us to go to? I mean, I think right now on the table, we're really trying to just solicit public input. We've got a lot more detailed slides, and not to steal all your thunder, but 3 or 5 span, do we want to get input on both, I think? And I appreciate the concept that the total span is not appropriate. Anything else you want to highlight in this as we move through?
I believe she's frozen, isn't she?
You're frozen her and she's on mute.
Okay, I'm going to turn it to Director Becking at this point, and maybe we can stop the presentation. And Ken, do you have any comments you want to make at a high level at this point? We can ask council, because I think where the resolution of the recommendation is to solicit public input. But Ken, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Essentially what staff have done is they've given you the bare bones base options under the 2-span alternatives. And then anything that you would like to do beyond that is incremental to those costs. The staff report indicates what the costs are. If you're satisfied that staff have adequately investigated the alternatives to your satisfaction, then the staff recommendation is that we go forward to the public to solicit their input on the various alternatives with a view to coming back to you with a report, hopefully within a month and certainly no more than 2 months, with a final recommended alternative for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it to council at this point. Any comments, Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you, in discussions with a number of councillors, and certainly Councillor Edwards, it's interesting what many of us were contemplating was a one-way on Bala Falls Road going, if you will, towards 169. Councillor Edwards put forward a notion that I can't get out of my head, and therefore there's a quote in there for traffic lights that it in fact would be two-way, and the lights would direct traffic to proceed either from, if you will, Perks towards the Vallecade or vice versa. And so therefore would be 2 lanes, or sorry, 2-way. My concern with that is I see is one of budget. I mean, I makes sense in principle to me. Then there's really no material change to traffic flow at all, except that it's $150,000 for some lights. I mean, anyway, I sort of put that out there perhaps for more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so I think Councillor Zavitz, I think the interesting point is right now, the staff report is putting out a lot of options. We can put those before the public. We can gain some public input, and then 30 or 60 days from now, we can chime in and saying, do we want traffic lights or do we not want traffic lights? And at that point, we come down to a real budget decision. So I'm going to go to Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Hayes.
Well, holy cow, Mr. Mayor, you and I are agreeing. And before I even got my chance to speak about it, I have lots of issues personally with the design. And I will just say that because of historic, like what ended up happening with the district redoing the other bridge. And so, but more importantly, it's not really about just me. So I really look forward to this going to the public very soon, honestly. And while I can pick this, that, I don't like this brick in this area, I will have that opportunity once it goes to the public as well. So I would suggest that we move this forward, allow staff to bring this forward to the public and get their feedback. Thank you.
And rounding out our AAA Alliance, Councillor Hayes.
I am going to have to agree with Mayor Harding and Councillor Nishikawa. I think that it's time to send this out to the public. I am very pleased with one of the drawings that almost mimics what we have. And I thank both Ken and Emma for listening to us last time and giving us something that it does reflect heritage value. And now it's time for the public to have their say on what they would like.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, I don't want to rock this alliance, so I certainly favor going to the public, of course, and I think they did a great job in the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to read this resolution. It's moved by Councillor Zavitz and appropriately, I think, moved by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that public feedback on the Bala Falls Bridge design concept alternatives attached to the report entitled Bala Falls Bridge Replacement Design Concepts and dated July 14, 2021 be sought, and that staff report back to the preferred replacement design concept. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we are carried. Thank you. Thank you, Emma. And thank you, Director Becking. Okay, we're going to go back here to a couple of motions. 7A was a resolution moved by, or new business motion moved by Councillor Edwards and by Councillor Bridgman, supported Kitchener resolution regarding planning act timeliness, or timelines, excuse me. And Councillor Edwards, did you want to speak to this in particular quickly? And then I can read the resolution. I think we'll all be in support.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just that shrinking the timelines as it is, our planning staff are under the gun now, and to take those timelines and shrink them, I don't think that's in the best interest of the public or of the township, and that's why I would support that motion. Thank you.
And while you're at it, I'm assuming you, I'm going to talk to your second motion, and that's the removal of LPAT.
Yes, because every time we make a decision, somebody runs the LPAT, it costs us money. And that it's made down in a Queen's Park decision for Muskoka or any other area in the province. And I think it's time something was changed on that. There had been a motion, I believe a year or two ago, to have local tribunals and that hear them in the areas, which and that it might be a better idea than what we have. So I would just support that to get the government on notice that we're not happy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to read this first resolution moved by Councillor Rogers, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that Township Muskoka Lakes supports Kitchener, City of Kitchener resolution of March 22nd, 2021 regarding Planning Act timelines. Any further comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, except for those that are frozen. Thank you very much. And the second resolution moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved the Township of Muskoka Lakes supports the Town of Halton Hills Resolution 115, dated May 25th, 2021, regarding the elimination of LPAT. Any further comments? Councillor Mazan has a comment. Oh, no, still frozen. That's all. I want to ask a question. Do you want to build a snowman with that frozen comment? But all those in favor of this resolution? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Councillor Mazan is back. That is carried. Thank you very much. Those two items move forward. Appreciate it. And I'll refer back to our General Finance, the resolutions this morning. For those who want any of the other resolutions brought forward, I know Councillor Edwards did, we can bring them with a mover and a seconder to council next month. Let's go to item 8A, and that's award. Oh, we've got a 7C. I missed one. Excuse me. 7C, AB. Where is C? Oh, the supplementary agenda. Thank you very much. And that is a verbal report regarding consideration of hot mix paving on Everly Road. Director Becking, quick overview, and I can read the resolution.
Quickly, Your Worship, staff put the Everly Road requirements into the district's tender. The tender has come in. Suffice it to say, we're about $10,000 below the allocated funds, and staff are requesting council's blessing to proceed. If you do give us your permission to proceed, we expect to be moving on to the work before the next meeting of council. So hence the reason for the urgency to deal with the matter. I apologize for the short notice.
No problem. Council, any questions? The only question I have, Director Becking, I know we were not doing the full length of the road. With some of the savings, will we be able to do a little bit more of this particular road?
Right now, we're trending ever so slightly below budget. So my short answer is I'll try, but I can't make any promises, unfortunately.
Okay, so we can do. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz, whereas council approved of the reconstruction of Everly Road in the 2021 budget. And whereas the township needs were included in a joint tender for hot mix paving with the district municipality of Muskoka, and whereas the low bid was received from Fowler Construction in the amount of $135,160, approximately $9,840 below the approved budget for the work. Now therefore be it resolved that council authorize staff to proceed with the works as described herein. Any further comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that's carried. Thank you very much. That's 7C done. Now moving on to 8A, award of tender for bunker gear. I'm going to just go right ahead and read this, and that's moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that contract T2 2021-31 be awarded to AJ Stone Company limited in the amount of $39,000, tax excluded, and that the fire chief be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Council, any questions? All those in favor? Chief, we got some new bunker gear coming our way. That one, self-contained breathing apparatus, moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that contract T 2021-28 be awarded to MNL Supply Fire and Safety in the amount of $112,326. Taxes excluded. That fire chief be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that one is carried. We have a community flag raising request from Muskoka Pride. I'm just going to go ahead and read this. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, second by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved, Township Council approves the community flag raising request, Muskoka Pride, as outlined. Staff report entitled Community Flag Raising Request, Muskoka Pride, and dated July 14th, 2021, be approved. Any comments? All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on there. We've done Bala Falls Bridge, community infrastructure reopening plan. Any comments or questions? A very, very detailed report, obviously a bit of a moving target. Thank you very much to Director of Public Works and all of our senior staff and CIO Hammond as we move to reopen the district and the township of Muskoka Lakes in particular. So moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that Council approve the reopening plan as outlined in the staff report entitled Parks and Facilities Reopening Plan dated July 14th, 2021. Any comments? All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to stage 3. Looking forward to that this weekend. Hopefully everyone can go inside and enjoy a meal somewhere. Reopening extension, am I on F? 8F. Moved by Councillor Jaglas, second by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the contract for the surface treatment of Old Bridge Road be extended to include the link section of Old Bridge Road from its intersection within Peninsula Road, District Municipality Road 7, southerly for a distance of approximately 110 meters. Any comments on this in particular? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Windermere Village Hall, moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved, Council accepts the donation. And this is regarding the ceramic mural. Donation of a ceramic mural of the village and surrounding area from Muskoka, Chautauqua, as outlined in the staff report. Request for accept and erect artwork on public property, Windermere Village Hall, dated July 14th, 2021, and that the mural be mounted on its own freestanding structure at a location approved by township staff in consultation with members of the Village Hall Board. Further, the community and economic development specialist be directed to research and develop a draft policy to address the issue of acceptance of public art to guide future requests. Any further questions on this particular one for Windermere? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried. Councillor Jagowitz, are you frozen or are you in favor? You are in favor. Thank you very much. Traffic update. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zabitz. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time finally passed. 2021-87 to regulate traffic on township roads, and 2021-104 to designate persons authorized to issue and authorize payments. Any comments? All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is regarding our had to terminate the head lease regarding our Port Carling Health Hub. Detailed report, but I think this is good news for the township to own ourselves. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-106 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement to terminate the lease between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and 811838 Alberta Limited, which is the Port Carling Health Hub, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments on this particular resolution? Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I would definitely support this. And you know, it might be nice for the council send a accommodation to Nat Brock Napier for all that he's done to bring healthcare to the township. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, I think that's a great idea, and we can work on something that we can sign on behalf of the council, or I can send a letter on behalf of council accordingly. So back to the resolution. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we've got some upgrades potentially for Raymond. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved by law 2021-108 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix corporate seal to an agreement with the Ministry of Employment and Social Development, Raymond Community Center washroom upgrades. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Good news, province is giving us money. Any comments? All those in favor? That one is carried. Page, slowly getting here. Road shore allowance, moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that a portion of original shore road allowance lying in front of concession 7, lot 6 watt, Porret, Rule 2, 1412, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to section 8, 9, 11 of Municipal Act 2001. Further by law 2021-93 to stop up, close, and convey part 1 of Plan 35R 26386. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. This clearly is under the old financial policy of selling shore road allowances. Any further comments? All those in favor? Sold. And carried too. There we go. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, second by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that by law 2021-105 to authorize execution of a quick claim deed designated as parts 1 and 2 on Plan 35R 6853 Simpson Rule 4, 19 and 8. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments on this particular? Moving some land around, it's caught in error. Any further comments? All those in favor? That is unanimously carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a report from our Bala Cranberry Festival. Before I read the resolution, does anybody have any comments? Good news is we're going to start to try and get some things happening. We've made some specific requests and denial of some requests regarding some parking. Any comments on this particular one before I read the resolution? Corey's online. Ruth, quick comment, or you were just ready to vote? Get on with Cranberry.
No, I'm a little bit unsure, I guess. Just reading the report concerning the Bala Arena in our opening plans. I just don't understand how this will work for Cranberry Festival. And I know that it's further along, and maybe we might be in stage 4, whatever that looks like and things. But today, I don't really have a good understanding that I could share with others.
Corey, do you want to comment how may this work regarding the arena for Cranberry Fest?
I may actually turn it over to Director Becking, if I may, just regarding the arena.
Thank you for that. Ken?
Your worship, the councillors' concerns are quite frankly well-founded. And I don't have a complete answer for you. I understand that events such as the Cranberry Fest are permitted under the new regulation. We're going to have to work, quite frankly, we're going to have to work with the organizers to make sure that it's as safe as it can be and that we comply with the direction of the health unit. And I'll work with them as we progress along. If there's anything of a significant concern, you can be assured that I will come back to you and make sure that you're well informed. I guess if council will allow staff the latitude, we'll do our best to make it work.
Okay, Corey, you want to comment?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to highlight was in the report, it identified that in step 3, events are permitted to have allowed 100 people. But once the actual regulation came out by the province in reviewing it, festivals and rural fairs, they are allowed up to 75% occupancy for outdoor events and inside 50%. So I just wanted to make sure that correction on my report is identified.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just if I
Yep.
could explain.
ahead.
So I do attend, I'll just say the counselor representative or whatever for the Cranberry Festival. And so I will be on another meeting with them later this week. But there's, I would just say that there's an inexperience level there too, that I believe absolutely true, that if we allow staff to work with them, I think we can have the best outcome. But a lot of guidance is needed, I will say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Zavitz.
And again, here's Ward A working together. Yes, absolutely. I chime in on Councillor Nishikawa's comments. We need all the help we can get over here in Bala for things like the Cranberry Festival. So anything the staff can do with their expertise to work with that committee and make this thing happen and become the most viable piece for Bala and coming out of COVID, can we please do that? I know we will try, but I would ask that we make every effort. Thank you.
Certainly agree with that. And I think Director Becking has that. The other good news is we're in July at Council approving this, but we can always make modifications through August or September if we need to accordingly. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved the Bala Cranberry Festival 2021 Township requests, included in Appendix 3 of the staff report entitled 2021 Bala Cranberry Festival requests and dated July 14th be approved, and the costs associated with the use of township staff to assist with waste diversion and rental of township facilities be the responsibility of Bala Cranberry Festival. And lastly, that bylaw 2021-109 to temporarily exempt the Bala Cranberry Festival and its participants from bylaw 2017-90 businesses licensing fees be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? There we go. Thank you. That's carried. Or you got some work cut out for you ahead with the chamber to make this move forward. So, Councillor Jagowicz, you have a question? No, just voting. We're having some delay to Lake Joe. Okay, where am I going here right now? Regulate traffic is done. Apologize. Proclaim both bylaws. Going into zoning bylaws. Subdivision plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor Evers, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first, second, third time finally passed. And that's bylaw 2021-97 to deem lot 54 on plan 5 not to be allotted plan of subdivision O'Brien Rule 749, and bylaw 2021-102 to designate site plan control part lot 18, concession 9 Medora, Seagram, Pemberton, Phillip, Roll 412-0101. Any further comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so those are done. We're moving on to zoning bylaws. Westbury International is our first. And who we got? Who wants to introduce this one for us? Mr. Soya, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. This zoning bylaw amendment was considered as part of a proposal to create 3 new lots, 1 retained lot. The retained lot is developed as part of the Port Carling Golf and Country Club, and the severed lots are vacant, all with frontage on Marion Lake. The purpose of the bylaw is to tidy up the existing zone boundary, to place wetland into the environmental protection zone, and to implement recommendations of an environmental impact study. A minor amendment to the bylaw is required to include an exemption from the lot requirements in the commercial open space zone. The resulting retained lot, which is part of the golf course, does not meet minimum lot requirements of this open space zone, and the amendment is therefore required. Staff have no concerns with the addition of this exemption, and I have no further comments, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any comments or questions on the particular at this time? Okay, moving first and second. Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-33 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Westbury International Rule 4911 and 537 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That one's carried. Mr. Soya suggested we have a minor amendment, and that is moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved the Township Council amend bylaw 2021-33 Westbury International. This amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation. It's hereby approved prior to third reading. The minor amendment shall consist of an exemption to the open space OS3 zone requirements for the retained lot. Any further comments on the amendment? All those in favor? Carried. And finally, moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-33 Westbury International be read a third time and finally passed. I'll call the question one more time. Any questions? All those in favor? Done. Carried. Impacts. Council, to remember? Any comments? Sorry, I think the other thing, I think we did it on one or two of our planning applications, but I don't think we did it on all of them. I'm not sure if this is the one that we recorded back from 30 days ago, the public comments or public impacts. But I think we had some people in support, some people asking some planning questions regarding some habitat studies and making sure that it could be done appropriately. But I think generally council felt in agreement with this. Would that be a fair summation of what we saw and heard a month ago?
That would be a great summary.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I will, for Mr. Pink and Mr. Soy, as we move forward on all of these, to try and help us remember to get the planning impacts, especially at the planning meeting, that we can record a little summary that can be inserted in the council minutes. Thank you. Okay, that one's done. Who's next on here? And that is a number to corporation. Sam, over to you again.
All right. Yeah, this bylaw was considered concurrently with consent applications for 2 lot additions, resulting in the increased size of 2 existing waterfront lots. The purpose of this bylaw is to provide an exemption to a site-specific bylaw that currently applies to the lands. These lands were rezoned in 2019 as part of consent applications that were never finalized. And as these lot additions, this proposal is now different. The bylaw is required to permit the resultant lot configurations. No minor amendments are required. However, please note that a letter was submitted yesterday from Planscape on behalf of abutting property owners, Dr. Naomi Himmel and Mr. Ron Lustig. The letter questions whether the public notice was properly posted on the property, and it states that an accessory building appears to be proposed on the subject lands next to the right-of-way over which they gain access to their properties. With regards to the posting of the public notice, the applicant's agent has reconfirmed that the notice was properly posted along with a photograph of the posted sign. Regarding accessory structures, the zoning bylaw would require any future buildings to be located a minimum of 10 feet from a private right-of-way, where a right-of-way does form part of a lot line, and where it does not form part of a lot line, the yard setbacks of the applicable zone would apply. Given these applicable setback requirements, staff have no concerns related to this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm just taking this opportunity. I came across a very similar situation as this yesterday, actually. And it was brought forward to me that, in fact, the accessory structure that was built, again, similar, actually has impeded a water course. That, you know, historically the water course was there. We don't have, you know, the big red flags up and things like that. But I would say that it was interesting from the mapping. I came home and looked at all the mapping and our district maps, for instance, and it does show the distinct water course. But because of this accessory structure that was built so close to the property lines, it now is creating another situation. So all I'm asking is that somehow either we have this conversation at General Finance, but certainly a second look at some applications and how further effects may be experienced by neighboring property owners. As I said, this one was very clear that there was a water course, and that now has changed. And I just think we should be more aware of things like that going forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know our LiDAR mapping certainly helps with that. Any other comments on this? So resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved, bylaw 2021-38 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, 221-3080, Ontario Corp Rule 224-27-8 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. There are no minor amendments as stated by Mr. Soya. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved, bylaw 2021-38, 221-3080 Ontario Corp be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried again unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's go on to our third, and that's Grossman. Who's going to speak to that? Caitlin, Ms. Walker, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This consent application and zoning bylaw amendment were submitted in the name of Grossman. The consent application will have the effect of severing the subject lot into two portions and adding them to the abutting lots. The zoning bylaw amendment will permit an existing two-story boathouse to be 21 feet from the westerly side lot line projection, and it will repeal bylaw 2001-111. In June, Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. There are no concerns from the district or township departments. No minor amendments are required. I'd be happy to answer any questions that Council has.
Okay, thank you. I'll give this first and second. Moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Hayes. Be resolved, bylaw 2021-86 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Grossman Rule 99471 be read a first and second time. All those in favor on first and second? That is carried. Councillor Jagowitz's hand is up. There we go. No minor amendments. Any comments right now before I read third reading, Council? Moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-86 Grossman be read a third time and finally passed. We'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Caitlin, maybe you can help us. Were there any public comments on this particular one that might have guided us, trying to jog Council's memory?
No, we didn't have any public submissions on this one.
Okay, no comments received, so no comments required. Go ahead, you're on for Jewett. Oh, no, there we go, Ms. Darling, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, thank you. Zoning bylaw amendment application has been submitted to rezone the subject land from waterfront residential narrow water body, so WR57R, to waterfront residential water access, WR3-7, zone and permit a single-story boathouse with an increased length, width, and height. In June, Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. No concerns were raised by the Township's Development Service Division or Public Works Department, and no submissions from members of the public have been received. There are no minor amendments required. I have no further comments at this time and would be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go to first and second. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-39 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Jewett Rule 62746 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we're carried. Thank you. No minor amendments, I heard. Any comments on the application from Council? Seeing none, I'll go to third reading. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-39 Jewett be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. And no comments from the public, so I think we are generally good to go. As I drove through the kettles on Friday, looked great from my perspective. Okay, we're through most of our regular programming. We did defer from this morning on new business, our District of Muskoka updates. And I will turn, first of all, if I may, to Councillor Nishikawa for any comments from District of Muskoka last cycle. Ruth?
Thank you. I would just suggest to council to go on to the website and review those discussions, of course. And I will also say that I did not attend that particular meeting because I chose to attend our rec plan meeting. I will not anymore miss council meetings though for that. Thank you.
Agreed. Good comment. And Councillor Nishikawa, just so you know, I've actually had a conversation with the chair of that committee, and they'll try and reschedule accordingly, or we could potentially put an alternate, but I'll leave that for you and the chair to have a discussion going forward. Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Jagwitz.
Thank you very much. And that we had a invited presentation. Wade Matthews was there for Muskoka Employment Partnership Project Coordinator. I believe there was an article in the Bracebridge Examiner last week on this, but you know, unemployment in Muskoka is 12.1%, and it's quite high. And that, and you know, he would probably come and do a presentation at one of our meetings if you liked. I found it very, very helpful. The director of workplace development from Fleming Cottage was there, and at living wage they figure is $17 an hour, so that we have a lot of people that are well below the $17 an hour. And let's see what else we got. And the child care subsidy and that adjustments be approved. They've increased it by $1, and that to help them out. And that 2/3 of the people asking for that are under $30,000. There's 59% are below $30,000, and 18% are between $30,000 and $40,000. So it's well needed. On the we had the algae bloom crustacean studies, and I will say that 3 Mile Lake and Clark's Pond is on that too. So this is something that you know, we should be looking at and talking to. And there was a grant, if approved, for rural community connections to expand the pilot from 2 to 4 days a week. That's the one running from Bala down through, and the one that goes through Port Carling. If they get the grant, the district will provide 10% of that. And that is my report, other than there's some subdivision and condominium files for Gravenhurst and that. So that's my report. Thank you.
Very much. Any questions of Councillor Edwards? Councillor Jagwitz, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. There were 3 important items that came through Finance Corporate Services on June 23rd. First one was talking about the tax-supported budget guidelines for 2022. Maybe of interest, staff asked for 4.9%. I recommended 3%. Some others recommended 4%. The committee settled on 3.5%. Just as a comparison, last year the guideline was set at 3% and ended up at 3.5. I just raised that. That may be of interest to us, and we set ours. The other matter that was important was the hospital local share funding came to our committee, and staff are now suggesting that that the district take the responsibility for $64 million over 15 years, and that may have to be $74 million if other sources of funds aren't forthcoming. So the proposal that staff brought forward, the budget had already included $600,000 for hospital funding, and they proposed raising that by $354,000 to just under $1 million for this year, and to raise it another $354,000 maybe I said million, but 354,000 each year in the next 15 years. So basically we go to contributing 1 million this year to contributing 5 or 6 million at the end. So those are significant numbers. And of course, they're being proposed to be added on the tax base. You know what that means. I made a suggestion that I felt this funding and decision would be more appropriate done closer to the taxpayer at the local level. There was a vote. I was outvoted on that concept. So that's what's headed down the path. The third item, and I won't go into a lot of detail on this because we did have CAO Stevens talk about the OPP detachment boards, and you got kind of an idea of what's happening there. But I guess my thinking is you can see, and I'm saying this as delicately as I can, that the district wants to retain control of that aspect. And you can see that in the idea that the district shall do this, and there shall only be one board for each detachment. And the province is open to other things, but we also have to work with our partners. So I had made certain suggestions, but I was actually impressed by Councillor Nishikawa's comment when she did that, and said that, you know, if this Bracebridge board is structured the way it might be, we might have some opportunity for some say. It would be made, of course, of Gravenhurst and Bracebridge, ourselves in Georgian Bay, and possibly two of the First Nations. So I think that possibly has some merit also. But the one thing I'd like people to consider is that I believe that the representation on these boards should come as a recommendation from the lower tiers. The district, once again, wants to appoint people to it. And I would think it'd be more appropriate if the area municipalities could make their recommendation. And if the district wants to have the whole say and do the appointment, fine. So what I was going to just suggest, and it's not making a motion or anything, just that the chair of general finance might consider adding that to one of his agendas to maybe just have a bit of a discussion how TML would like to represent themselves to the district, who are of course going to represent to the province. And I'll just round out my comment in that I think I'll let it go. I think I'll let it go at that. Thank you very much. That's my report.
Great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Mr. Hammond, I think I wanted just to chime in on that final comment about composition for the OPP boards. Derek?
Your Worship, just a clarification for Councillor Jagowitz. My understanding was that what I heard the CAO, the district CAO say was that the area municipalities could pass a resolution making a recommendation for membership, the member of council along with a community member, and that would be endorsed by resolution of district council. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Okay, let's turn back. Any other comments on that right now? And I think to Councillor Jagowitz's comment that certainly continued discussion on this at GNF is appropriate. We may not have a specific resolution, but as this progress and as the board composition continues on, I think we certainly should continue to chime in and make recommendations accordingly. Our Public Works meeting in June, for those who drive to down Ferndale Road, it will be repaved. That's a award contract was done, so that's good news. Good news, excuse me. We had some information on the water disruption emergency in Bala, or sorry, not Bala, in Bracebridge. I'll pick a city, please, for 500. Also, the mandatory connection bylaw update. Councillor Edwards had asked a question last cycle whether or not people, when we make people connect to town sewer and water, can they continue to use their current well, if you will, to water their lawn so they're not having to pay water rates? And yes, that is a possibility. and the bylaw will be amended accordingly. There just needs to make sure that there is no possibility of cross-contamination, that well water system could not get into the house at that particular point. So that's the only one limitation, but it is possible, and the bylaw would be amended accordingly. The one big issue that we face, and that's coming forward, is that of our waste management. Probably heard some discussion in the last 30 days. Our landfill in Bracebridge is filling up way too fast. And before my grandson graduates high school, it will be full. And we're trying to find a way forward. Staff will be coming back with some more specific recommendations. One of those might be reduced bag limits. One of them might be clear bags. We're going to be expanding organics programs into the rural areas. Also, at many of our transfer stations, we will now be accepting and looking at accepting organics. All of those do come with costs, but we are really trying to manage our way through all of those. And that in high level is all that probably, we did also do our no parking zone on Muskoka Road 13, by the way, so which is great, in and around the Torrance Barrens. And I'll leave it at that. That's pretty much what we dealt with. Ruth, question.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to mention Southwood Road again, because we had moved it forward last month at District Council. There was concerns certainly over the last 2 weekends that wasn't happening, but in fact it is. So we are going to get a portion of Southwood Road, our portion. I'll just say the section in Ward A is going to be addressed, and just so others can know. And that actually, the contract has already been let. The problem was why people were getting upset, thinking the line drawing people, whatever you want to call those folks, they came out prematurely. And so it led people to believe that the work on the road was not going to happen. But in fact, checking with district staff and stuff, it's all ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, just on the mandatory water connections, when I had talked to the commissioner, he was saying something that you had to move all the pumps and everything out of the house. And I was trying to tell him you don't have to do that. All you have to do is have an outside hose bib from the well outside, nothing inside. I talked to Marcus Thurman on that. He sort of agreed. They were talking about backflow preventers and everything else like that. It's not really necessary. If they wanted to have city water outside, they could put just a Watts 9D on it, and that would cover it. I've sent everything through on that, but I'd be glad to, and not to talk to anyone on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Just a comment from my AMO Waste Management Task Force on the organics, and it is a labor of love to do it from a rural end because those bags leak, and all the time when I go in there, there's green garbage bags, there's all kinds of other things in there which I assume negate the organics being able to be recycled. But the City of Toronto actually lets clear bags be part of the organics program, the ones that don't allow leakage. I think that would be a huge step forward for us in our organics program. If we could allow that. I don't know if it's more money in the process, but it would make a huge difference in how messy it is and people wanting to actually do that.
So thank you. Yes. And again, our Engineering and Public Works Committee will be considering a number of different solutions, looking at best practices right across the province or across the country for that matter. So, but just the highlighted is, you know, a good municipality in Ontario is generally speaking, recycling about 60% of their materials. We are at about 30%. So we significantly need to change the way we are handling our materials. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, and again, a question to you, sir. I wonder if you could share your frustration. I know I get asked every day, there's two things that are highly frustrating. I'll use the word again. relating to waste and relating to water levels. And it seems the two things that have been foisted upon us all by the province, at least, are those two very vital things that we can't seem to conquer. And I can recall now it's been 2 years. It's been almost our complete term of council that we've been inundated or faced with things like COVID, things like the flood in 2019. And here we are with caterpillars and butterfly moths flying everywhere. Are you, like, what do we tell people when they ask us, what the heck are we doing about water levels and waste when it relates to up the hike to the district and therefore the province? I think we need better answers. I'm running out of answers down here, and I hope we have some. And I guess I would love it if you would share any insights, sir. Thank you. I mean, in your capacity as the chair of the Public Works, committee at the District of Muskoka. Thank you.
Well, let me just say from a solid waste, it resides with us in Muskoka. The bin site removal is the MECP, and they have dictated that the bin sites, the 87 of them across the District of Muskoka, must be removed. So we are trying to find new and alternative ways to deal with it. The simple answer to understand bin sites is that we must own our garbage. So what you put at the end of the road should be able to be tracked back to you. The group community bin sites or whatever they are, where anybody can throw anything they want in there, the garbage is not owned. So looking at options, and basically the province has said you can't do that. There are many bin sites that have been close to proximity or near the water. Some of them have been on, for example, in Windermere at Parker's Marina. Parker's has said, we don't want the bins anymore. So that's private property, and we don't have the ability to manage our way through that at the best of times. So there's lots of moving pieces. I can say that district staff have been working tirelessly. We did hear today from one of our delegates this morning that they appreciate what the district staff, Stephanie Mack, Director Mack, has been working on and dealing with the garbage related issues, but there's going to be more to come. There'll be more communication as we try to minimize our waste. I will also state unequivocally that we have had problems with our contractor over the past 12 months where they have blamed COVID and a number of issues, but we've had far too many for anybody's liking missed collections. And it's nice to say, let's just go put a new contractor involved. But when the cost of your solid waste by doing so doubles, we're going to get even more pushback. And there's no question that the cost of garbage and recycling in this province continues to escalate. So we're all faced with that, trying to find economies of scale where we can and move that forward. Regarding the question of water levels, and people have seen a lot of social media posts, we are working slowly with the province. They are listening, but the change to the Muskoka River Water Management Plan is not something that is going to happen in 3 months or 6 months. It will take a number of years to make the official changes that we may require. And to be honest, they may not get changed. For those people who saw some of my social media posts in the last 7 days, I can tell you at the end of June, I had people yelling at me that the water levels are too low. And 10 days later, they're yelling at me that it's too high. There's lots of people saying, well, you can predict the forecast. I'm not sure about any of you who look outside right now, but when I saw the forecast last night at this time, it was supposed to pour rain all day. As a matter of fact, it was supposed to pour rain all day Monday. It was supposed to pour rain all day Tuesday. It didn't. So Environment Canada will tell you their best predictive model is 24 hours. And they cannot manage the Muskoka River Water Management Plan and all 42 control structures within 24 hours. So it tends to become reactive versus proactive in much of the stuff. They can do as best job they can. But the one thing that is happening is, again, more detailed conversation between the ministry. And we have a task force or a communications committee that do meet regularly, especially when things are getting out of whack regarding the Muskoka River Water Management Plan. I do have a commitment from the Premier to continue to look at this and to move things forward. Again, it's not happening in the next 3 weeks or 6 weeks. Certainly, I believe the ministry did a far better job this winter and this spring in winter drawdown. Got a little lucky with weather, but obviously we didn't flood. But I can tell you that there was a number of people pointing a finger saying we drew it down too far. So I think if you want to solve the problem, we all might get on our knees on a Sunday morning, and that would be our best bet and probably the best effect to truly affect change as to managing our water. Otherwise, that's all I can tell you. It's not a hydro dam. I will also say that everyone is saying, I don't see water moving over the South Falls or the North Falls. There's just a trickle of water. At the end of June, because of the lack of precipitation, understand that in the first 3 months, or from April 15th through June 15th, it was less than 40% of the average rainfall. That's significant across our region, and that certainly affects water levels. They slowed intentionally. We had a meeting at the beginning of June. They slowed Bala down to 6 cubic meters per second. 6. In the height of the floods, they're spilling over 400. In 2020, they were spilling 500 cubic meters per second. So that's a trickle. But they also, the Bala in particular is now managed and can spill 100 cubic meters per second through the hydro plant, where people will never see water moving over the falls. So people need to understand that it's a different regime. And if you see the doors up, there's water moving through the plant. So that's as simple as I can say it, but you can also flood out the Moon River really quickly because they have to open up Ragged Rapids and Big Eddy at the same time to get water moving out of the Moon River. Glenn?
Thank you. Through you, of course, I do appreciate your words, and you know I do. And we've had many side discussions. The thought, though, is that we're trying to provide answers when we don't have the answers. I think I'd rather see us drill down more into the asking of those better questions of the powers that be, because I don't care who did what. They didn't let the logs out of the South Channel soon enough. And of course, now we flood the Moon River and last weekend, et cetera. So, I agree with you. I concur with you. Where I was going was more the challenge of it all. How are we able to hold someone to account? That being the province, the Ministry of Natural Resources. That's the problem. That's where we're getting pounded. Everybody doesn't understand it. We had too much water, obviously, for too many days. And then all of a sudden they let it all out. And now it's actually much better again. It's a Lake Muskoka problem when it comes from, Algonquin all the way through and down into us and down into the Moon River. I'm getting many people saying, guys, don't tell us why it's, what's happening. Tell us what we can do about this in the future, because that's that big challenge that I know you're wrestling with, and your peers and friends and acquaintances are dealing with at that higher level.
So I guess my simple answer to that is the Muskoka Watershed Advisory Group has made recommendations to look closely at our watershed. And 7 days ago now, when everybody was up in arms that the water was so high, remember, we had 5 to 6 times the normal amount of water through the last week of June to the first week of July. Absolutely torrential rains. I don't know how to stop that. Anything normal, there would have been no problem. But the watershed all the way up, Lake of Bays was underwater, Quagama Lake was underwater, all above Huntsville, Fox Lake, all of those appropriate lakes that feed into Lake Muskoka were all underwater. They all experienced extremely high water levels. So it was right across the board. It wasn't just Lake Muskoka. And unfortunately, no matter what they do, you cannot move water through this system fast enough. But that is one of the MWAG recommendations, to understand the limitations and then maybe increase flows. And there should be 2 things. One is we may have to store water for those days of drought, and we may also have to find ways to move water through the system faster. It's that simple, but none of those changes are going to happen overnight. But it is something that's on the table, and there's money now to do that. So that process has started. That's the answer, best I can say. Okay, council, we're going to take a 10-minute break, but I'm going to just read a resolution to go into closed first, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back into closed. Moved by Councillor Jagowitz, second by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved, closed session convene at 4:35 p.m. for litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. 2, LPAT matters. 1, potential litigation matter. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 1 matter, and personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees and labor relations employees negotiations. 1 matter pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll turn off the cameras and we will reconvene. Go grab yourself a coffee or what you need, and we'll reconvene at 4:45 in closed session. Thank you.